Our weekly immigration news roundup is brought to you by the law firm of Figueroa and Associates. For consultation on any immigration or legal matter, please call 855-768-8845. That's 855-768-8845. For full stories and more immigration news, visit www.theimmigrantsjournal.com. That's www.theimmigrantsjournal.com.
Hello, my name is Mary Campbell, legal assistant at the law firm of Figueroa and Associates, and your presenter with this week's immigration news. We begin with fraudsters sentenced for operating large-scale marriage ruse to get green cards for 600 migrants. 4 fraudsters caught operating a large-scale marriage fraud agency, setting up sham marriages to help over 600 migrants bypass immigration laws and obtain green cards, were sentenced this week for the scam in federal court in Boston. The group of scammers, all Philippine nationals living in Los Angeles, were charged with marriage fraud and immigration document fraud for recruiting American citizens to marry the agency's clients, staging hundreds of sham marriages in exchange for cash, federal prosecutors in Massachusetts said. Authorities said Marcialito Bail Benitez, 50, ran the so-called agency out of brick-and-mortar offices in Los Angeles and would rely on his co-conspirators to recruit Americans to wed the agency's clients. The scam marriages and adjustment of clients' immigration status would cost between $20,000 and $35,000 in cash. Biden's proposed budget includes $4.7 billion emergency fund for border migrant surges. President Joe Biden's budget proposal for 2025 includes a $4.7 billion emergency fund for border security to enable the Department of Homeland Security to ramp up operations in the event of a migrant surge, according to a portion of the budget reviewed by NBC News. The contingency fund would let DHS tap into funds on an as-needed basis when the number of undocumented migrants crossing the southern border tops a certain threshold that is unspecified in the budget. If the money is not used to address a surge, the money would be transferred to the General Funds of Customs and Border Protection, CBP, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, AVMA. The request is likely to fall on deaf ears among congressional Republicans, who have already refused to fund $13.6 billion the Biden administration asked for in an emergency supplemental request aimed at responding to a record high number of migrants crossing the border. Judge Alito extends Supreme Court pause of SB 4, Texas immigration law that would allow state to arrest migrants. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito on Tuesday, March 12, extended an order blocking Texas troopers and police from arresting and jailing migrants suspected of crossing the U.S. southern border without authorization under a strict state immigration law known as SB 4. Judge Alito continued an administrative stay of a lower court order that had paved the way for Texas officials to enforce SB 4, one of the toughest state immigration laws in U.S. history. The pause was going to expire on Wednesday evening. Alito on Tuesday extended it through Monday, March 18. In New York, advocates and lawmakers rallied to demand right to counsel in immigration court and $150 million for legal services funding. Today, elected officials joined the Care for Immigrant Families Coalition, legal services providers, and asylum seekers at the New York State Capitol to rally in support of a $150 million investment in immigrant legal services. This investment is critical to help ensure that families remain together and that recent arrivals have the resources to fight their immigration case and gain access to work permits. Advocates also called for passage of the Access to Representation Act, ARA, a first-in-the-nation bill which would establish a right to counsel in immigration court, extending the same representation rights already available in criminal proceedings. The ARA has received support from the New York State Bar Association, major labor unions, 125 nonprofits and community-based organizations, and more than 100 elected officials across the state, including Attorney General Letitia James. Offer tickets to depart NYC when forced to leave shelters. Only 2% of adult migrants accept. Fewer than 30 adult migrants per day are typically accepting a city-offered bus or plane ticket out of New York City, and hundreds more are ending up with no shelter bed to sleep in for the night, newly released data shows. Mayor Eric Adams' administration has said its rule restricting shelter stays for adult migrants to 30 days is alleviating a strained shelter system, making room for newer arrivals and helping slash projected migrant spending. But data obtained by Gothamist through a Freedom of Information law request shows that on average, just 2% of adult migrants maxing out their shelter limits each day are leaving the city. Meanwhile, more than 80% are turned away because no shelter beds are available and are sent to waiting rooms in other parts of the city to try again the next day. Many migrants have said they're choosing to sleep on the street, the subway, or in parks instead. In other news, streamlined process for initial employment authorization documents for refugees. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, has implemented a streamlined process for Form I-765, Application for Employment Authorization, to provide employment authorization documents, EADs, more efficiently to eligible refugees after they are admitted to the United States. The new process applies to individuals admitted to the United States as refugees on or after December 10, 2023. Under U.S. law, a refugee is legally authorized to work as soon as they arrive in the United States. Obtaining proof of this work authorization in the form of an EAD, however, was previously a cumbersome paper-based process that led to undue delays. The new process is fully automated and no longer requires refugees to apply for an EAD, allowing for more efficient processing and adjudication of Form I-765 and quicker delivery of EADs after we approve them. Finally, Senator Katie Britt's exploitation of a survivor's story is a new low in the right-wing's bogus migrant crime hysteria. Contrary to Britt's claim, the crimes weren't linked to drug cartels, but a professional pimp, and involved foreign sex tourists, Parker Molloy wrote in her newsletter, The Present Age. While Senator Britt strongly implied that President Biden's immigration and border policies were at fault, the horrific events occurred roughly 2 decades ago, when George W. Bush, and not Biden, was in the White House. These heinous crimes didn't even take place near the U.S.-Mexico border, but rather in Guadalajara and Mexico City, Katz said. It had nothing to do with the border or immigration. Thank you.
Our weekly immigration news roundup is brought to you by the law firm of Figueroa and Associates. For consultation on any immigration or legal matter, please call 855-768-8845. That's 855-768-8845. For full stories and more immigration news, visit www.theimmigrantsjournal.com. That's www.theimmigrantsjournal.com.